Just jobs?
Just skills.
Just transition?
Just Europe.
This is Just Europe, a podcast series that takes a closer look at the challenges we're facing on the path to a fair and inclusive Europe, striving to leave no one behind as we decarbonise, modernise and digitalise our economies. My name's Jack Parrock. It's really great to have you along with us on this podcast. This podcast is all about how research and innovation and the projects around them practically help Europeans to benefit from the opportunities of the transformation, whether it's about education and training, managing change together, or regenerating disadvantaged communities and regions. Here, we're also about new ideas and research to support people, strengthen our social model, and ensure a just transition for all. Now, this episode is all about adult lifelong learning, how the EU's trying to make sure that everyone can be involved in projects which contribute to the just transition. We're going to hear from people working for EU-funded projects about the best ways to make sure we all have access to education and skills, no matter what stage of our lives we're in. I'm delighted to be joined here in our Brussels studio by Elisa Gambardella, who is Education and Lifelong Learning Coordinator at SOLIDAR Foundation. It's really great that you're along with us. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I also have Frank Siebern-Thomas, who's the head of unit of the Fair, Green and Digital Transitions Research Unit in the European Commission's Directorate-General for Employment. How are you doing, Frank?
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Adult lifelong learning, it is self-explanatory as a statement in itself. Perhaps, though, in one sentence, you can explain exactly what it means, Elisa.
I think there's actually a lot of confusions about these terms. Adult learning is the sector that allows and engages adults in learning opportunities. Lifelong learning is an approach to education. The way we say it in the lifelong learning platform is education from the cradle to the grave. And it is education lifelong, so it can happen at any moment in your life, but also in any way. So it is about formal education, so we're talking about schools, we're talking about university, but also non-formal education. So what you learn, for instance, in an association or by participating in a student movement, for instance, or even informal learning, which can happen, for instance, as you chat with your friends about a topic you didn't know about and you're learning something. This is the lifelong learning approach.
Okay, so before we get into our discussions further, let's head to Greece and find out a little bit more about how projects in adult lifelong learning function. Take a listen to this.
The Enables project is bringing nature back into education. Across Europe, universities and training centres are turning campuses into living labs, where students co-create real solutions to today's environmental challenges. It's all about learning from nature to protect biodiversity, fight climate change, and inspire a greener future. We've visited one of the 7 living labs in Greece to look at how this EU-funded project is contributing to new perspectives on the green transition. Here in Thessaloniki, professional women of various ages and at various life stages are coming together to contribute to greening the environment. This is the IDEA Training Academy, where women working mainly in STEM-related professions, science, technology, engineering and maths, are leading the integration of nature-based solutions into urban policymaking. Women like 22-year-old Irene Marachatsi, a communications officer.
I am very passionate advocate of lifelong learning. Anyone who knows me knows that the answer to what do you want to be in life is I want to know everything and be good at every, language. I want to master every skill that there is out there. As a communication officer, you know that we are working in different fields of study and jobs. And here in DEA, I understood that the environmental learning and education is a very important thing that surrounds all the fields of study. So I aspire to adapt sustainability and environmental studies as a non-environmental student. to my space of work so I can be more prepared.
For the participants, it's a chance to demonstrate leadership and agenda setting in a professional sector that has traditionally been dominated by men, as 26-year-old Elisabeth Petridi explains.
I could say, like in Greece, there is like this incident that sometimes companies hire more men because they think that they're more advanced in this field. But I believe that women also like bring new knowledge about things, and they can be like really powerful in this domain. It's really important for me to learn with others, like to engage with different people, because you can learn about what they think, what are their beliefs, and also to see something from a new viewpoint.
The Enables project aims to boost skills and capacity building to ensure environmental sustainability and a nature-positive society through learning and teaching around biodiversity and nature-based solutions. 25-year-old Panayota Fabrikanou doesn't come from a STEM background herself. She's a linguist. But it's the principle of open learning and collaboration that she's especially attracted to.
I'm a huge advocate of lifelong learning. This project helps me make sure that whatever I do will be focused on equity, including all people or all students. So this means that even if we use technology, we have to do it in a way that protects the environment, in a way that we integrate our city in what we do. So we live in Thessaloniki. It's an urban space that has a lot to teach us, but we don't see it as a teaching lab. We just see it as a city. So this specific project, Enables Labs, can help me see Thessaloniki through a different lens, a teaching lens.
The purpose of the Living Lab is also to ensure that anyone of any age and learning history can embrace nature-based solutions and make their own contribution to the green transition, as 57-year-old Venetia Manzaria explains.
It always bothered me that I hadn't been able to pursue studies in the way that I had wanted to earlier in life. But I came back to this idea once my daughter had grown up, and I said to myself, I can do this now. For me, knowledge never stops. It should never stop. And no one with any interest in gaining knowledge of any subject, regardless of age, should be prevented from it. For me, it's the most beautiful thing, being able to absorb knowledge continuously as long as you live.
We spoke to Anne-Kathrin Fender from the University of Heim in Germany, which is coordinating the project, about how Enables, under the banner of the EU's Horizon Research and Innovation Programme, is working across Europe.
From my point of view, adult learning is one of the key factors which enable the green transition. Because obviously you need people who are experienced in these green jobs, but you need as well people who are not that close to the green professions in general, but have to be educated in some basic understanding of the green environment, of the social environment they are living in, to enable this transition as a society. We have these 7 living labs in our project all over Europe, and obviously they have completely different settings, different geographical backgrounds, they have different environmental backgrounds, but we do have a common framework which we, as a first step, created for our living labs. And in this framework, all our living labs are running. My ideal outcome at the end of the project would be that we, as a network, which we have established so far, can work together beyond the duration of the project and facilitate what we have already started on, and that we can be role models for how to integrate nature-based solutions and biodiversity conservation into higher education and vocational training.
People really engaging. Elisa, what did you make of what you heard?
I think there's a lot of takeaways, and thanks for sharing all these experiences that otherwise I wouldn't have had the opportunity, I think, to learn about. I think some key words that were not mentioned as such, but I think in terms of concepts were definitely there, were the importance of transversal competencies. We heard a lot how important it is to also be able to move from one sector to another in terms at least of understanding how these are interconnected. And when I think of transversal competencies now, my mind also goes back to the Basic Skills Action Plan that was launched by the Commission earlier this year, where the citizenship competence is identified as a key one, as part of the basic skills set. And in this sense, there is a particular approach to citizenship education, which is the Global Citizenship Education 1, which we work a lot on in SOLIDAR, and which also sees the importance of the interconnections between systems, and in particular also the environmental system and our socioeconomic models.
I never had the wish, let's say, to know everything, like the lady who spoke in the recording here, but I fully share her view that we shouldn't stop, let's say, educating ourselves to empower ourselves, to learn about nature-based solutions or others which will either give us access to a labor market in need or which will allow us just to change behavior in a changing context. This is what I took from this recording, that mainstreaming sustainability across all disciplines in itself is a goal, not only in scientific disciplines. Women still have less access, or women are one of the underrepresented groups in key sectors to the green transition. And this is something which shouldn't be like this, which doesn't have to be like this. So addressing this, empowering them by increasing their uptake of STEM, science, technology, and engineering, mathematics is important, but also by letting them, let's say, lead this transition in the different functions. And I believe, it's not only about women. There are other groups which are underrepresented in these key sectors. We do have many sectors with labor and skill shortages in the union, in some 40 occupations at least, many of them key to the green and digital transitions. And there's no reason why we would not want to address these inequalities, why we would not ensure inclusive access to labor markets. And for women in particular, maybe the last point I'd like to make, this would also help maybe close gender pay gaps and other gaps in access to the labor market they are currently subject to.
Elisa, let's talk a bit about SOLIDAR. Perhaps you can explain to our listeners what you do, how you're engaged in making sure that people continue their education and their learning throughout their lives.
Yes, SOLIDAR is the European organization for progressive civil society organizations that work together. We're talking about 50 civil society organizations based in 26 European countries within and beyond the borders of the European Union that come together in SOLIDAR not only because they work in one or multiple of the sectors that we cover, which are social rights, educational, lifelong learning, and international cooperation, but mostly and importantly because they share the political vision and the willingness to advance social justice with the approach of a just transition. So this is SOLIDAR in generic terms. More specifically to the topic of today's discussions, we have a couple of initiatives. One that is very important to us is, of course, as I said, the whole sector of education and lifelong learning as an approach, with especially a popular education approach to it, which is core to some of our funding members in different member states. But then also a very important initiative for us is the coordination of the European Alliance for a Just Transition, which also has its own website, alliancejusttransition.eu, that I invite you all to visit, and through which we gather 50 European stakeholders working for a sustainable future, including social, climate, and environmental civil society organizations, but also workers' representatives, think tanks, political parties, and foundations, with the ultimate aim of bringing all these stakeholders together to define and promote a common agenda for just transition. And of course, last but not least, the Just for All project, which just concluded after 2 years, and in which we try to identify how can we improve adult learning in order to better support the process towards a just transition, but also how the strategies for achieving and supporting the process of just transition can better support adult learning in doing that.
Yeah. Let's listen. You mentioned the Just for All project. Its final conference very recently took place. Let's take a listen to some of the people that were speaking there. We've got a recording. Raffaella Chiera is the Secretary-General of the EAEA, the European Association for the Education of Adults. Take a listen to what she had to say.
It is about ensuring that people have the knowledge, the courage, and the opportunities to shape the future that they are living through. We are quite ambitious. We want to tackle systemic exclusion and to make sure that just transition does not reproduce old inequalities. The core of what we think that democracy is about. So it's not only about elections, it's about real participation of everybody. It's everybody having a voice. We must normalize the political role of adult learning, that adult learning is transformative and never neutral. That a just transition without learners' voices is neither just nor truly a just transition.
That was Raffaella Kira there. Now let's have a listen to Victor Negrescu. He's the Vice President of the European Parliament. He's from Romania.
Things can be done in a better way, providing support, accompanying people, informing them, educating them, upskilling them, giving them a sense of belonging, but also the possibility to participate in a driving seat. If we are not successful, people will rightfully become angrier. And I don't know what is happening in your countries, but in my country, they are mad. We need to diversify our understanding of social pillars and social rights at European level, because I truly believe this is what people expect from us. So it's up to us to do this work, convince people, and show that Europe is the right channel to do more. Do not be too idealistic, because these are not idealistic times. The complex dimension, the integrated dimension of preparing people for their daily lives, for their profession and their future. And for that, we need lifelong learning, which also implies several sets of skills, not only technical or professional skills.
Okay, Frank, you were also at the conference. You spoke there. Perhaps you can give us a bit of an idea of what the policy measures coming from the European Commission are, how these projects function.
Yes, I'll do my best. Let's say I was very happy to be at this conference because we are often at the beginning of a process by launching calls for proposals, selecting topics, but it may be difficult to follow them up and it takes some time. So it may take 3-4 years, sometimes from the start of an idea, from a call you launch to a finalized project. And it's great actually to be exposed as policymakers, and the European Parliament was presented, and the Commission, to see the final outcomes, to see the seriousness of the work, the policy recommendations which are based on it, the tools which have been developed, but also the enthusiasm that comes with it, because you do create a network, you do create a community during the duration of such a project. And at the same time, you are confronted with questions. Will we be able to continue our work? Will it be taken up? Is it of use for policy making? Having said this, let me say one word about the political background or the, let's say, motivation for this project, because it does relate intrinsically to the point just made by Elisa on just transition. The Commission had included just transition as one key element in its Green Deal from the start. This has also been reconfirmed now under the new mandate, which has stated that we stay the course on our climate and energy goals, but while enabling all actors, industry, companies, workers to be an effective part of this transition by supporting them where needed, so by increasing competitiveness, ensuring productivity growth also in the context of this transition in new sectors. So the recommendation has called to develop social innovations and where they work, scale them up or let them use them in policy making. And this is what we have done. So in 2022, we launched a so-called call for proposals, which is an open call to anyone at local level, communities, companies, SMEs, civil society organizations to apply. And it was an open call to say, do you have new ideas? Please come up with new ideas to design, develop and test local approaches on the ground to promote fair, green and digital transitions. And the project we have been discussed, which was presented at this conference, is one of the 17 projects selected in that context out of many, many applications. So there was a huge interest to do so. And it's good to see the feedback, the tools being developed, because if we understand that they work, we can, as I said, scale them up in other funding tools, cohesion funds or others, or we can use them to guide policy making and to exchange best practices across policymakers. So to cut a long story short, we launched a call to civil society organizations and other community actors to come with ideas how to make this transition work in real life. And this is one of the examples which was delivered.
Can you explain a bit more about the practicalities, Elisa, of the Just for All project? What did you discover? What did you learn? What were the successes?
So first of all, it was coordinated by SOLIDAR, but it was also conducted together with EAA. Indeed, we had Rafaela with her opening remarks before, but also ICAE, which is based in Serbia, and it is a global organization. And also it was conducted with the support and implementation in 4 member states, which were Sweden, Ireland, Cyprus, and France. So we had one civil society organization in each of these countries, which supported, of course, the implementation at the national level, and for us then at the European level, the ability to draw some conclusions that could be then brought forward as recommendations potentially to policymakers. So we did a lot of things. We developed educational tools in terms of curricula and also an entire MOOC that was developed as part of the project. But we also had policy recommendations and analysis at the national and European level. So I'm not going to bore you with each and every one of the deliverable we had. But I think what I want to share with you today is 4 main takeaways, which are also present throughout, I think, the different activities we conducted during the project. And one is how essential it is to give proper attention to adult learning and learning in general, because very often it is celebrated as an essential aspect of any policy really that we want to promote. But as a matter of fact, it ends up being more of an auxiliary support to other things. So I think how this project and others also think as part of this call put adult education at the core of what we're doing, and lifelong learning in general is very, very important. Then, secondly, but not less importance, of course, how relevant it is to focus on policy coherence and policy alignment. And then something that I think we heard also in the different interventions was how important it is to engage with the stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, I do not only mean, which is still important, civil society organizations and the other stakeholders that are intermediary, let's say, between the policymaking level and the implementation level, but also learners directly. And in this sense, also the importance of actors that play this intermediary role is very, very important to make sure the policies we design are tailored to the needs we want to cater to. And last but not least, all of this, of course, require a lot of support, adequate funding and investment. We will never grow tired of saying that education is not a cost but an investment, and I think this is also a result of this project, among others.
You mentioned there the need, Elisa, for direct involvement with learners. Let's take a listen to a practical example of this. Nora Fahy, she's the manager of the Roscommon Women's Network in Ireland, which helps marginalised women in Ireland's rural communities to find work. I had a conversation with her. Take a listen.
Peer learning is a huge thing, part of our work. Women meet, they chat, they have conversations, they tell stories, they feel safe. They'll meet women who've maybe had similar life experience than they have had, and they don't feel judged, and they'll get support from each other and they'll learn from each other.
Tell me about some of the projects that have spun off from some of the work you've been doing into businesses, into enterprises.
The women working in our volunteering in our charity shop in 2008, again, women who had been service users of Roscommon Women's Network in the shop, learning new skills and sharing their skills for the benefit of the organisation. They'd seen this documentary, and it appeared to her that all the bags that we were filling with unwanted or stained or damaged clothing was ending up beside a river in some developing country far, far away, and that all we were doing was contributing to the problem, and that actually really upset them. You know, the other women there kept talking. They watched the documentary, they got it on YouTube, and then they came to me and they said, we don't want to be part of the problem, we want to be part of the solution. Please help us. Some of us can sew, some of us can do this, some of us have these skills. We want to do something to reduce the amount of textile waste that we're creating that is causing a global problem. That's how Cycle Up Textile started.
Tell me, what does this upcycling do?
The women create beautiful, usable, saleable goods and gifts and textiles repurposed from pre-loved or textiles that have been donated to our charity shop that are good quality. And they sell them.
What do you learn about this to other projects? So these are 10 women that are working in this project. What do you try and do for other women, perhaps who want to do other things that aren't sewing or other projects?
I think because we work to a community development ethos and all the principles of community development, which is grassroots, social justice, social inclusion. That's what we do. That's how the Cycle Up project came. We also have an accredited healthcare course running here. It's a full-time course. We have 16 women at the moment currently who've just started. A previous 16 graduated in August. We're not the experts. The people living in the community, the experts. We just go out, shake the bushes, and give them the opportunity to be included.
Tell me about your connection into the EU funding.
We're very, very grateful beneficiaries of the EU Just Transition Community and Enterprise Fund, which we have and will have up to the 31st of March 2026. Our revenue generation, our income has increased in terms of sales of our products and our training and our workshops. 148% we've been able to increase our sales revenue since we, within a few months of having that funding, because it's enabled us to employ a business development coordinator, a part-time administrator, and a production team leader. We knew we had everything. We had the women skilled. We just needed those resources and that staff and that knowledge to pull it all together. So, that's huge to us. That's made such a difference to us.
Nora, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Jack.
Frank, how important is the thinking of direct funding for grassroots projects like the ones we've been hearing about?
It's good to hear beneficiaries who are grateful, let's say, for access to EU funding and make the best out of it. We are also grateful recipients of their work and their outcomes, because getting access to these funds or enabling access to these funds is not an act of charity. It's because we believe that the social economy has a key role to play for economic development, employment creation and growth, social innovation, social investment, all of these things we do try to promote with different funding tools. Just Transition more generally do have direct benefits overall and a part, let's say, of our socio-economic fabric. This said, the structure, let's say, of funding tools at European level is complex, as you know, and there are many also I don't know in detail, to be honest. But you do have different types of funding, direct funding. So the research and innovation funding is one example of those, where the Commission, the EU level, directly funds great ideas, let's say, to research different tools. And then we do have, and the social innovation projects we have heard today are the same kind of funding. So the EU institutions have a need, have an idea, organize a call to collect these good ideas and bring together different partners, enable them to set up networks and come with ideas. That's the easiest way to do. It's often top-down, inspired by EU policy making. But you do have many other policy tools, in particular those which we call shared instruments or shared funding instruments, like the cohesion funds.
Elisa, perhaps coming to you, can you explain a bit about the link between adult lifelong learning and the just transition?
Yes, the way we see it, there is a mutual relation and a beneficial one between the two concepts. So one thing is the process towards a just transition, of course, which requires necessarily all the population, really, including adults, to acquire the competencies that are needed, first of all, to understand what's going on, why do we need to progress towards a just transition, and how can we do that? And once we have understood that, and therefore we support it, ideally, we also need to acquire the competencies that allow us to participate in this process, which means gaining competencies that then can get recognized and therefore make us participate actively also in labor market terms to achieve this process. And on the other hand, as I said, the process towards a just transition requires support. Democratic support. So in this sense, adult learning spaces and learning spaces in general are also spaces where we can work on this democratic support by explaining what's going on, involving and engaging the learners into understanding and be part democratically of this process. So in this sense, there is a mutual relation the way we see it in SOLIDAR, the lifelong learning platform as well.
How is adult lifelong learning different from training?
I agree with Elisa that both are important, both are interdependent, both are needed. The transition is a generational task, so this has to imply a focus on education throughout the lifetime. And I did mention our Council recommendation on fair transition. There are many other Council recommendations. One of them, I should mention at least, is by our colleagues from Directorate-General for Education and Culture. They have issued a recommendation on education for sustainability. And those two go together hand in hand. And that's what I relate to, let's say, adult learning. It's learning, acquiring knowledge more generally, of general knowledge, in the context to also help not only address the challenges we are facing as societies and economies, but also to promote engagement, to promote civic participation and community development, as was mentioned before. Training and adult training, I think, is often seen as more training on the job, for the immediate labor market needs. We know that there are many. We know that there are labor and skill shortages. The union has set itself a target to train at least 60% of workers every year. This means a worker should have training at least every 20 months or so. And we believe this is vital. This is vital to empower people in the transition to learn fast. And we do see that currently these participation rates in adult training on the job are lower than that. So which could be indicative that there's need to support companies and workers more in this process to increase uptake and skill transfers that are needed to develop the competences directly needed on the labor market. So that's probably the difference between the two.
Elisa, how is adult learning different from training?
Training is an educational tool that can be used to develop and acquire a certain skill or even a competence as such, which is composed of knowledge, skill, and attitude. So it's wider as a concept than just a skill. While adult learning is a whole sector within the broader approach of lifelong learning. So with adult learning, we look at formal education that happens for adults, but also non-formal education that can happen and informal learning that can happen for adults. In the sense that when we look at adult learning sector, we look at everything and every opportunity that adults can have to learn.
Frank, where do we go from here in terms of policy?
The Commission earlier this year adopted what's called the Union of Skills, so a tool which announces and develops a lot of concrete actions, let's say, to ensure that we reskill and upskill people at all levels and to help address also labor and skill shortages in our economies and include a focus on basic skills, but as well as digital skills, VET schemes, STEM skills, and so on. So it's a really broad approach to ensure that Europe is the best place to train people, to educate people, and to attract and retain them to live their lives here and to contribute to the economy. Another one which is important to mention coming forward is the so-called quality jobs roadmap, because there's also a need to focus in the transition on the impacts the transition has on job quality overall. So it's not just the question, can I keep my job? Can I transfer to a new job? But the question is also, if I have to change job, if I have to change tasks, how does my new job compare to the current one? Am I at least as well off? Do I earn well? Do I have career prospects in this job? And what are the conditions in this job? And there are a lot of questions. So the Commission has announced that it will put forward a quality jobs roadmap to discuss more generally the focus on ensure that job creation concerns quality jobs. And this includes fair wages, fair working conditions, and also fair job transitions in this context.
Elisa, one final question. How important is inclusiveness in all of this?
This was the very focus of this project, and I believe of other projects, like Frank mentioned, that were funded by this program. So this is, of course, the first thing to do is to make sure you're targeting the right groups of the population, and then what you design is designed for them and their needs. And then in general, as an approach, I think if we do not prioritize inclusion and inclusiveness, we risk ended up in a very fragmented society, which would be the very opposite of the keywords we heard also from the conference, which were about hope, courage, finding and creating opportunities. So in this sense, I think prioritizing inclusion will allow us to find this courage, being inspired by hope, and providing these opportunities.
Are you both feeling positive?
I feel positive thanks to the community that was created, thanks to the results we achieved. I do not feel positive about the overall context in which we work, absolutely, but I do find hope in these practices, and I do think that this can inspire us to continue working to try to improve the situation around us.
Frank?
These are challenging times. I agree with Elisa that the context is a difficult one in which we're evolving. There are many challenges overlapping which we have to address, but they also bring opportunities. I did feel positive, in particular in the final conference of this project, and I had one quote in my mind where somebody let's say, from the beneficiaries said, this is the end of the project, but it's not the end of the world. And I thought this was both an ending of a project, but also a start of something. And I took this positive attitude with me out of this project. So, yeah, we have tools, we have a lot of evidence, we have goodwill, we have engaged people. So why shouldn't it work?
Thank you so much, Elisa and Frank. It's been really great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone else who's contributed and spoken to us here on Just Europe. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much all for listening. I look forward to having you along with us on our next episode of Just Europe. Stay tuned and thanks for joining. Cheerio.